Some risks are worth taking to find out which family member is responsible for killing your parents. Hi, hello, ¿cómo estás? I am Jan. Welcome to my channel. Here we chat about books, nostalgia, and where these things overlap. After traversing 4 continents in the span of a month, Amy and Dan have faced many dangers, like their own relatives.
I don't have friends. I got family.
They have gathered 4 clues so far: iron solute, tungsten, gold, and now myrrh. And yet the danger seems to keep growing, now with the Madrigal sending out threats to the Cahills.
They're back. Beware the hooks.
Dan and Amy are risking a lot to know the truth, and to stay ahead of the competition. Amy and Dan are woken up by a knock at their hotel door. A telegram has arrived for them. In it are coordinates to a locker. They're hopeful it's Grace again, and head out immediately to investigate. They take a cab, the driver attempting to take Dan's backpack, but he quickly grabs it back. While on the road, they're followed by Hamilton Holt, who they last saw in Tokyo, but are able to lose him on the way to the airport, already running from another Cahill.
Shit, here we go again.
There they run into the Cabrals. Apparently, they had bribed the cab driver earlier and follow them. Ian tries to be a bit creepy with his romantic intentions and gets kicked in the shin by Amy.
Kicking? Oh, I want to do some kicking.
A small chase ensues, but they can't shake the Cabrals, almost like they're tracking them somehow, which Dan and Amy realize means there is a tracking device on them. Dan finds it in his backpack, a phone. They ditch the device in a baby stroller, leading the Cabrals astray. They get to the locker and remove 3 objects: a honey-colored glass ball paperweight with an image of a room inside it and a key in it, a parchment with numbers and letters on it, and finally a box with 2 fake passports for them inside it and appropriate disguises, as well as 2 airline tickets for Volgograd, Russia. Also, a Visa Gold card and a note about how they only have 36 hours to find what they're looking for. When they plane, they examine a photo of their parents in Russia. They question why they were there in the first place. Dan also makes quick work deciphering the parchment, finding a list of Russian cities. Amy also believes she knows what they're looking for. They rent a motorcycle in Volgograd. Dan drives and they stop at a tall statue that commemorates the Battle of Stalingrad. Amy mentions how the next clue is tied to the statue. With Hamilton Holt, we follow his family as they hunt the Cahills from Egypt to Russia. His sisters plant a tracking device onto Dan and Amy's motorbike as Hamilton takes charge in stalking their siblings. Hamilton is worried about disappointing his father. Dan eggs him on, but Hamilton spots Amy and gives chase. Dan and Amy strike a bargain with Hamilton to beat the Cabrals who had shown up moments ago. They get back to the statue, and Amy breaks the glass and uses the key to open a door into the Motherland Calls. That's the name of the statue. Amy says they need to get to the eyes. Dan and Amy race Hamilton to the top. In the statue's head, Dan finds a wrapped cylinder with the written letters STP. Dan figures out it must be St. Petersburg. Hamilton arrives 5 minutes later, having taken the hard way up. Dan tries to get rid of him by spraying a can of soda in his face, but he just guzzles all of it down. The Cahills agree to split information on which cities to visit, with the Holts taking Siberia while the Cahills stay in Russia.
I think we should split up. What are we looking for? Clues!
When they split, Ian calls Irina for backup, telling her to follow the Cahills while they follow the Holts. Irina tails the Cahills to a train station before we come back to Dan and Amy aboard a high-speed train. When they finally examine the cylinder, it's revealed to be a figure of Rasputin. And a clue is inside: a shoe plus the letters V and A plus a heart. Amy mentions how Rasputin was killed outside the Yusupov Palace, and maybe that's where they should go when they reach St. Petersburg. She even points out the previous ruler of Yusupov Palace was Count Shuvalov. Irina overhears all this through a mic she planted, thinking how dangerous their plan sounds to her. In St. Petersburg, Dan and Amy lose the man in black tailing them, and receive a letter asserting that they're on the right track from NRR. They arrive at the palace and break in through a side window after following clues left by NRR. They quickly go to the Rasputin exhibit and search for clues. They're interrupted by Irina, who they misdirect with a fake clue map. Meanwhile, they get away with the real clue. They stay in a fancy hotel that night and check Nellie's voicemail on the phone that they brought with them. They know she's worried, but they also find a cryptic voicemail from a man asking about a status report.
What's the situation, Snake?
They clue Hamilton in on where to go in Omsk to look for a statue of Dostoevsky. Nellie calls that night, but they ignore it. The following morning, Nellie calls again and tells them she's on her way to Moscow. Hamilton calls and tells them the statue is looking at a message that reads, Alexei's Playroom. Dan takes out a bunch of money off the gold card and uses it to buy a car off of a random Russian man. Amy drives this time, taking them to the royal village or the Tsar's village, where the Romanovs went on vacation. Once they arrive, they make their way to Alexander Palace. In Alexei's playroom, they're monitored by a tour guide the whole time. When a commotion occurs, Amy hides in a closet to search for their next lead. She finds it in one of the clothing pieces, and they both run out of there. Irina has eyes on them and follows their car, unknowingly being led astray, losing Dan and Amy, who were hiding in the trunk the whole time. When alone, they examine the clue, a honey-colored stone carved with a message. Amy figures it out, using the guidebook, that it's a clue to Magadan, Siberia, along the Road of Bones. She calls Hamilton and sends the Holtz on the hunt. Then Ian calls, taunting them. With Hamilton, he updates his father about the intel he gathered and also complains about the Cabral stalking them. With Amy and Dan, Amy has the theory that the clues are pointing toward the Amber Room, but she says that was stolen during World War II by the Germans. Hamilton calls to fill in Amy and Dan on what they found. You can notice how they're bonding with Hamilton at this point. Dan even finds himself trusting Hamilton. The Holtz found Lenin's head, with letters and numbers carved into it. After hearing it, Amy tells Dan they're going to break into the Kremlin. On the flight to Moscow, they figure out the letters and numbers are a clue to the State Kremlin Palace, balcony box 4, third row. A quick dash through the airport and they're at the Kremlin with 2 hours left to find what they're looking for. Someone is tracking them at the same time. This NRR who says that Dan and Amy are ready. Dan and Amy use the rest of the letters and numbers to crack the code and open a secret panel in the theater and proceed through it, narrowly avoiding a guard. They then use the last of the code to get past an elevator and into an old Lucian stronghold. Past a few more rooms and passages, and Amy and Dan arrive in an office where a woman in white sits. She mentions how her mother knew Grace Cahill. She is Natalia Rustanova Rodova. She is the daughter of Duchess Anastasia, a Lucian. She sends Irina the backup she requested and leads the children to the Amber Room, flying them by remote control helicopter. She will go with them, but she has hemophilia and it's too dangerous for her. She flies them to the Church on the Blood, where her ancestors were gunned down. There, a Lucian black circle is set up. Only Lucians with permission from Vikram Cabral may enter. When they arrive, Irina is also there, but they avoid her as they head into the church. Inside the church, Dan and Amy make their way down to the Amber Room, past the tomb to the Romanovs. Inside, Amy inputs the code Natalia told her into a clock. Out pops a bead of amber with the words, 1 gram of melted amber. The clue was under their noses the entire time. They find a file on Madrigal's, learning that they are more powerful than the Lucians and may have had the royal family killed. They also find a file on their parents with fake passports for Hope and Arthur, along with stamps from South Africa, Nepal, Indonesia, Japan, and France. They were also hunting clues just like Dan and Amy. They are caught by Irina, who knows she only has a slim chance of getting them out alive. She's caught by other Lucian security and knows it's too late. She pulls out a dagger and approaches the children. Outside the Amber Room, the man in black inadvertently creates a distraction, allowing Amy and Dan the chance to sneak out and hide in a coffin until the coast is clear. In a Yekaterinburg hotel, they await Nellie's arrival, and Dan calls Hamilton halt, informing him what the final clue was that they found. Eisenhower promises that this is the end of their alliance, but Dan isn't so sure about that.
You sure about that? You sure about that?
So that's where we leave our heroes for now. Another clue down and a haunting revelation about their parents. See where their quest takes them next time in the sequel, In Too Deep. Thank you for watching. Please like, comment your thoughts below, and subscribe to my channel. See you in the next one. Bye.